Felt deep like the ground underneath. Yeah. Late nights, cold air, quiet prayers in the dark.
Greetings, 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 greetings. This music is from J. Cole, all those who survived through it, all those who live a life of experiences, trying to grasp understanding of life. It's something.
Yeah. Late nights, cold air, quiet prayers in the dark. Yeah. I was born where the street lights flicker like doubt. Mama cried in the kitchen trying to figure it out. No silver spoon, just a dream and a scar. Trying to find God while I'm chasing these stars. Used to sleep to the sound of the rain on 10. I was sirens and voices in the way to sin. Every loss left a mark that I carried within. Every wind feel hollow when you question the wind. I seen brothers turn ghosts for a piece of respect. Seen hope turn smoke when the future gets checked. Trying to pray but my faith feel thin as a thread. Still I kneel, hands clasped, conversations with dread. They told me hold on, but they never held me. Said be strong, but they never felt me. Now I write every line like it's therapy. Trying to heal from a past that keep testing me. And I'm caught between the silence and the scream. Trying to find a little light inside the dream. Oh, if I fall, will you catch me in between? Hey, or am I walking all alone through what I've seen? Yeah, I'm fighting just to breathe. Holding on to faith I barely see. If there's a reason in the pain, let it speak. Cause I'm still here, yeah, I'm still me. Cold nights, long roads, heavy heart, no God. Every choice like a gamble with my soul on the line. I just stared in the mirror, didn't know that face. Just a man full of questions in a godless place. But I remember when mama used to whisper them prayers. Said even when he quiet, he's still there. So I walk through the fire like I'm already safe. Even when I feel buried, I'm climbing that grave. I got scars that I hide with a confident grin. Got wars in my mind that I'm fighting within. Every step feel heavy, every breath feel thin. But I still stand tall like I'm built to win. I ain't perfect, I just try to believe. Even when the doubt got his hands on my sleeve. If the light don't shine, I'ma make it from me. Turn pain into purpose, let the broken thing breathe. And I'm caught between the silence and the scream. Oh, trying to find a little light inside the dream. Oh, if I fall, will you catch me in between? Oh, or am I walking all alone through what I've seen? Yeah, I'm fighting just to breathe. Holding on to faith I barely see. If there's a reason in the pain, let it speak. Cause I'm still here, yeah, I'm still me. If I lose my way, but the sky still call me. If I break in pieces, will your hand still hold me? I've been running from the dark, but it knows me. Maybe faith ain't sight, it's just trust it slowly. Yeah. Now I walk with a weight, with my head held high. Every tear I shed turn to fuel inside. I don't need all the answers, just a reason to try. And the voice in the silence telling me I'm alive. I done learned every loss got a lesson to teach. Every fall bring you closer to something you seek. Every pain got a purpose, even wounds got to speak. If you listen real close, hear the truth underneath. So I write for the kid feeling lost in the night, for the soul in the dark still searching for light, for the ones who keep fighting when they losing the fight. You ain't alone, yeah, we all in this life. And we're caught between the silence and the scream. Trying to find a little light inside the dream. If we fall, will we rise in between? Keep walking through the shadows we see. We fighting just to breathe. Holding on to faith we barely see. If there's a reason in the pain, let it speak. We still here, We still free, still here, still breathing, still believing, yeah.
My screen started on me. So once again, greetings to you all. This lecture is called The Last Judgment, Hellmouth, or the Narrow Gate. Once again, Last Judgment, Hell's Mouth, or the Narrow Gate. And we understand this from our Anglo-Saxon history, based upon our writers of our history, which is none other than Bees Venerable. So once again, I want to give honor to the Third Temple English Church of England. I want to give all honor to all the members, all the staff, all those who are trying to get an understanding of what it is that we have the capacity to do. Going all the way back to King Edgar, our Christ. Okay, it's very important to understand what I'm bringing to you, especially in these last days. So this channel is not for followers. It's not for subscribers. This channel is strictly to guide you and inform you as one should do in my capacity as a messenger. You can take it for what you see it as based upon your comprehension level. But once again, it's very important to not walk upon this channel lightly. Okay? It's very important to understand that I am a human being just like you. But the understanding that has been given to me is far beyond a human being. Okay? So if you watch my channel or you're familiar with my channel, please, just take a look at them. You don't have to subscribe, but just take a look at them. Leave a comment, tell me what you think. Okay? Because this is to inform you. Okay? To guide you in making a formal decision in these last days. Okay? And with that, we get started with this marvelous lecture. The Last Judgment, or Hellmouth, the Narrow Gate, as told by Drythelm. Okay? As told by Venerable Bees. All right? Very important that you comprehend where I'm going with this lesson, because we all deal with a want to know of heaven and hell. Okay? Is it a real place? Is it going to be a heaven, or is it going to be a hell? Or is it going to be a fire and brimstone? Okay, all right. These things are very important based upon your belief system. All right. And for all those who don't know or should know, most of those stories were allegorical, symbolic. Okay, so I'm going to try to give you the understanding from a legal perspective of Hellmouth. Okay, or that narrow gate, which 99.9% majority of you are in that portal, that jurisdiction, which we call hell. All right. So very important. Pay attention, like, share, subscribe if you want to. All right. As well as donate free and common soakage, whatever you have, to $ Clifford Jefferson Hare. Once again, The Last Judgment, Hellmouth, The Narrow Gate, as told by Drythelm, a Anglo-Saxon monk. Okay? All right? This is about his near-death experience. Okay? A lot of you go on YouTube, TikTok, and you see a lot of people speak about near-death experience, about going to heaven and going to hell. All right, seeing what's going on, but not being allowed to enter into heaven or into hell. All right, but have to return back until their mortal or secular bodies. Okay, very important that you comprehend. I'm not saying these people are out of their mind, because our culture, our history, the people who told our story talks about these examples word for word. Okay, and with that, we get started with this marvelous lesson. First, let's talk about the God gene. The God gene. Okay, everybody write this term down. The God gene. I'm gonna touch on a couple of terms real quick. Look this word up, or this term. The God gene hypothesis proposes that human spirituality is influenced by heredity, and that a specific gene called vesicular monoamine transporter 2, or simply called the VMAT2 gene, predisposes humans towards spiritual or mystic experiences. This idea has been proposed by geneticist Dean Hammer in a 2004 book called The God Gene: How Faith is Hardwired into Our Genes. The God gene hypothesis is based on a combination of behavioral genetics, neurobiological, and psychological studies. The major arguments of the hypothesis are: spirituality can be quantified by psychometric measurement. 1. 2. The underlying tendencies to spirituality is partially heritable. 3. Part of this heritability can be attributed to the gene, the VMAT2 gene. 4. This gene acts by altering monoamine levels. And 5. Spirituality provides the evolutionary advantage by providing individuals with an innate sense of optimism. VMAT2 gene. Okay. Proposal. According to the God gene hypothesis, spirituality has a genetic component of which VMAT2 comprises on components by contributing to sensations associated with mystic experiences, including the presence of God and feeling of connection to a larger universe. Okay. The research uses the self-transcendent scale developed by psychologist, pardon self, psychologist Robert Cloninger to quantify spirituality using the three subscales: self-forgetfulness, as in the tendency to become totally absorbed into some activity such as reading; transpersonal identification, a feeling of connectedness to a larger universe; and mysticism, a openness to believe things that remain unproven, such as ESP, extrasensory perception. Cloninger suggests that taken together, these measurements are a reasonably way to quantify, make measurable, an individual propensity to be spiritual. Spiritual. Okay? That's one term. Now let's look at another term. Apparently my screen keeps going out. Forgive me. Okay, we're back. An out-of-body experience, OB, or sometimes UB, is a phenomenon in which a person perceives the world as if from a location outside of their physical body. An out-of-body experience is a form of autoscopy, literally seeing self, although this term is more commonly used to refer to a pathological condition of seeing a second self or doppelganger, if I'm pronouncing that right. The term out-of-body experience was introduced in 1943 by G. N. M. Terrell in his book Apparitions, and was adopted by researchers such as Celia Green and Robert Monroe as an alternative to belief-centric labels such as astral projection or spirit walking. Okay? Very, 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 very important. Now let's look at another term called engrams. This is old information. Engrams, neurophysiology. An engram is a cognitive information imprinted. Y'all don't hear me. An engram is a unit of cognitive information imprinted in a physical substance. theorized to be the means by which memories are stored as biophysical or biochemical changes in the brain or other biological tissue in response to external stimuli. It didn't say internal stimuli, it said external stimuli, meaning things outside of your physical self. Demonstrating the existence of and the exact mechanism and location of neurologically defined engrams has been focus of persistent research for many decades. Moreover, contemporary philosophical debates keep exploring the aspects of engrams that remain unexplained. Okay? So changes in the brain or other biological tissue in response to external stimuli by which memories are stored. Did you hear that? This is called the matrix. In biology, matrices, plural, is the material or tissue in between the cells within a eukaryotic organism. Did you hear that? You got prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells, organisms. Prokaryotic organism and eukaryotic organisms. The structure of connective tissue is an extracellular matrix. Fingernails and toenails grow from the matrices and is found in various connective tissue. It serves as a jelly-like structure instead of cytoplasm in connective tissue. That brings me up to the word tissue in biology. In biology, tissue is an assembly of similar cells in their extracellular matrix from the same embryonic organ that together carry out specific functions. Tissues occupy a biological organizational level between cells and complete organs. Accordingly, organs are formed by the functioning grouping together of multiple tissue. The English word tissue derives from the French word tissu, meaning fabric, derived from the verb tissue, to weave. Okay? This is the matrix. This is the portal. This is the jurisdiction that you must understand concerning yourself. Brings me to my next term, near-death experiences. How many of you have had these? A near-death experience, or NDE, is a profound personal experience associated with the death or impending death, which researchers describe as having similar characteristics. When positive, which most but not all respond experiences are, such experiences may encompass a variety of sensations, including detachment from the body, feeling of levitation, total serenity, security, warmth, joy, the experience of absolute dissolution, review of major life events, the presence of a light, and seeing dead relatives. While there are common elements people experiences and their interpretation of these experiences generally reflect their cultural, philosophical, or religious belief. This is the God gene. This is the VMAT2 gene, or the God gene, which depends upon engrams. Engrams. An engram is a unit of cognitive information imprinted in a physical substance, theorized to be the means by which memories are stored. Key part. Memories are stored as biophysical and biochemical changes in the brain or other biological tissue in response to external stimuli. Breaking the matrix. The only way that matrix can be broken from going into the spiritual world, from the physical world, is through memory. Okay? Memory of your past ancestors, or your past culture, or your past religious remembrance. Okay? Very important. This means before you, not after you, but before you originated in the physical world. Okay? So write these terms down. Okay? In the order. Engrams. Autobiographical memory. Out-of-body experience. Those down. I hope you move forward. Our corporate structure. The Third Temple English Church of England, with our Lord. Okay? Corporation of, by way of my official capacity. Okay? Which we'll get into later. But we do have a website, and we do have a YouTube channel, which you're watching now. Okay? Now let's get into the purpose and intent of this lecture. The Last Judgment, Hellmouth, which is the narrow gate, okay? Which is narrow gate, all right, from the physical world into the spiritual world, which many of us have experienced through near-death experience, as well as out-of-body experiences, based upon engrams, all right, as a result of us having the God gene, giving us the ability to leave the physical body, i.e., the biological world which we're trapped in, which is the world of tissue, the world of matter, mass, volume, okay, into the spiritual world, the world of ether, emptiness, okay, all right, our true state. Very important to understand that when I go into this next term. Let's look up the Last Judgment. Before we do that, let's look up the Doom Book. Okay? The Doom Book by Alfred the Great. Write this down. This was created to unite the tribes, just like the Ten Commandments in the Mosaic Code, i.e. the Septuagint or the Masoretic tablets. All these were created to unify the wandering tribes. okay, into one divine, spiritual, political, recognized nation of people, okay? Very important to understand that, all right? This is why you have an anchoring date to determine your existence, which we call a calendar, okay? That's the only purpose of calendar, to show the anchoring date of the existence of the people based upon wherever it is that they practice, okay? All right? It says the Dome Book, or Doombot, which was a code, a legal code. So everything we deal with is based upon law. A legal code of Alfred the Great was the code of law, dooms by being laws or judgment. Okay? We call that the common law now. Okay? We call that the English common law. Not losing sight of the title of this lecture, Last Judgment, Hellmouth, Narrow Gate, based upon the near-death experience as told by a monk by the name of Drythelm, okay, which is told by Venerable Bees, all right, a monk from Northumbria, all right. It's very important to understand that our ancestors had the same experience that modern people are experiencing now. Nonetheless, it's now based upon memories of your past ancestors. Okay, it's basically what your external self or through external stimuli receive. Okay, what could be ghosts, goblins, demons, etc., which all live in what we call hell. Okay, very important to take this lesson seriously. The Doom Book Code of Alfred, or Alfred the Great, was a code of law compiled by Alfred the Great. Alfred codified 3 prior Saxon codes, those of Ethelbert of Kent, NDE of Wessex, and Offa of Mercia, to which he prefixed a modified version of the 10 Commandments in Moses and the incorporated rules of life from the Mosaic Code and the Christian Code of Ethics. This would be the Septuagint and the Masoretic tablets, okay? Very important to understand. From then you get the Vulgate going all the way up, and I'll explain that in a second. Okay? So we have the law or judgment. That's a legal term. Now that there's a separation of church and state, the religious institutions or corporations or churches have the right to sue just like secular or real people do. Okay? They are called corporate entities. So most of the discrepancies or conflicts they had in regards to rights, property, continuity are reserved in modern day courts. Okay? Very important to understand that. All right? So we see Alfred the Great encoded the law or judgment for us. All right, we ain't like everybody else. Okay, we have our own law and code that were created going back to time immemorial. Way before William the Conqueror changed it to what we call feudal law, and that was the law of what we call the devil, symbolically, allegorically, based upon your Christian, biblical, religious stories, which I'm going to break down in a second. But and for you to understand that, we have to go to my next point. The last judgment. Remember, Alfred the Great coded the Doom Book called the Laws and Judgment, incorporating the 10 Commandments, going all the way back to Moses, which are rooted in the Septuagint and the Mosaic tablets. Okay? Those are the original instructions, commandments for the children of God. Okay? Very important. And I'm saying that these children are the English, misnumbered as Hebrews, misnumbered as Israelites, misnumbered as many other names that we adopt. Okay? So it's very important that I'm not disputing that you're not called those names in those past lives of our ancestors. Okay? But the law has changed. The law has to be incorporated or updated, okay, to have the same, legal effect. Let's move forward. Brings us to the last judgment. By the way, the Avengers are coming out with new movie called The Doomsday. Okay, starring Dr. Doom. The Doomsday. Avengers are coming out with a new movie called The Doomsday. Okay? The Last Judgment. Okay? This is called The Hallowing of Hell. It's called The Hallowing of Hell. The Last Judgment. I'm going to go very slow for you all. You could scroll and watch whatever you want to watch. But if I was you, I would watch this lecture. As you know, with my lectures, I always save the best for last. So if you change the channel or scroll somewhere else, then you're going to miss some key points. The Last Judgment or Judgment Day, not from a religious, not from a spiritual, not from a theosophical, but from a legal effect. Law. That's what you need to understand. What's going on. All right? That's what's taking place right now. Okay? The Last Judgment or Judgment Day is a central Christian eschatological event marking the return of Jesus Christ to evaluate all of humanity, both the living and the resurrected dead. So just talking about everything from AD, Annos Dominios, when the year of our Lord. That means from 1 AD till 2026. All right? As well as those who died before AD to 2026. You need BC for that, which means before the Christian era. And that goes all the way back to the beginning of creation, which goes back into the people identified as Hebrews, which would be the year 3761. Okay? Which is the year of creation. I'll break that down in simple terms for you to understand that in a second. So the Last Judgment or Judgment Day, so automatically we're talking about Hebrews, Christians, those who believe in Jesus Christ, all right? This is for all those who claim to believe in some entity, some person, all right, expected to return, all right? In modern day, in the secular day, all right? Right now, the Last Judgment or Judgment Day is a central Christian eschatological event marking the return of Jesus Christ to evaluate all of humanity, both the living and the resurrected dead. According to the biblical apocalyptic literature, Revelation, Christ will sit upon a great white throne to render a definitive verdict based on the individual faith, words, and deeds. Okay?
Verdict, that's a legal term. Okay, that's something you use in the court of law. All right, very important. This divine audit results in a final separation in which the righteous are granted eternal life. Hold on. Okay. So this divine audit results in a final separation in which the righteous are granted eternal life in the presence of God, while the wicked face external punishment. Ultimately, this event serves as a supreme manifestation of God's justice. It doesn't say spiritual justice. It doesn't say religious justice. It says God's justice and his definitive triumph over evil and death. I want to go here for a minute. This New Jersey's website to show you that this applies in modern day. Preamble. Listen, this is not no spiritual, all right, communication to the people, okay, all right, in regards to judgment of God, all right, judgment of God, all right, liberty, freedom, return of land, Leviticus 25:10. Preamble, we the people of the state of New Jersey, grateful to Almighty God for the civil and religious liberties which he has so long permitted us to enjoy, and looking to him for a blessing upon our endeavors to secure and transmit the same unimpaired to succeeding generations, do ordain and establish this Constitution. This is a unimpaired retain rights before these rights was created in this Constitution, or any Constitution for that matter, because we're talking about Almighty God. Okay? Almighty God. The secular world is recognizing the religious right to honor God under God's law, okay, and protection of what God promised when you obey his law, such as life, liberty, property, and due process law. It's right here in the second section of Article 1. All persons are by nature free and independent and have certain natural and unalienable rights, among which are those of enjoying and defending life and liberty, of acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and of pursuing and obtaining safety and happiness. It's right there in your preamble of your Constitution. I don't know if it's in every Constitution, but we know it's in New Jersey's Constitution, and it's there for a reason. If you remain obedient to this lecture, I'll show you why. So let's move on with this lecture. So God is in the picture. Even though we can't see him, but God is definitely in the picture. Back to the Last Judgment. So we're Englishmen, all right? So we have to depend upon our interpretation from an English perspective, okay? Very important, all right? So we look to beads, venerable beads, to identify which his understanding of the allegorical or symbolic or theosophical or religious interpretation of the last day of judgment, okay? All right? For those who practice Islam, it's called Yom el what's it called? Pardon self. Yom el Qiyamah. Qiyamah. If I pronounce it wrong, please forgive me. Okay? Yom el Qiyamah. Okay? The day of judgment. All right? Everybody has their interpretation or symbolic or spiritual interpretation of the last day of judgment. All right, very important for you to comprehend that. So we're not going to go through all of them, all right, because I have a lot to talk about today. But what we are going to talk about, the origin of the last day of judgment, okay? Because we know that originated from the Nicene Christianity creed, okay, that was forced upon even the English when they were known as the Anglo-Saxon, okay? We know this going back to the Gregorian mission, which we're going to talk about today, all right? So in Nicene Christianity, all right, the doctrine and iconographic depiction of the Last Judgment are drawn from many passages from the apocalyptic sections of the Bible, but most notably from Jesus' teaching of the narrow gate in the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Luke. Okay? Very important. This is where most of you get that interpretation from. And that interpretation is wrong. Let's examine why. I don't want to forget where I was at. Let's see why. Let's do the math. How many of you do the math? Correction of the summary of time. Chronological time. In the context of historical timeline, the year 1 BC directly equals the Berber year 950, which was termed by what's his name, Amar Nagaidi and the Berber Academy in 1980. Okay, he chose this date historically and symbolically going all the way back to the Libyan Berber king Shushin. Okay, and dated it 950 BC. Okay, which is the exact chronological timeline for the Hebrew calendar, for the Hebrew people, but we know the Hebrew calendar was created to mark the year of the creation of the world. This is cosmic creation, dealing with cosmic descendants, okay? Very important to understand that. There are no human beings around at this particular time, okay? Nonetheless, there's an anchoring date that was proposed by what was his name? What's his name? Ahmad Nagir in 1980, if I pronounce his name right, to historically and symbolically date 950 BC, which in the Gregorian year would be the year 1 BC. Okay, all right. All three calendars existing simultaneously to anchor themselves in. All right, and to an existence, okay, which was preserved by or through their calendar, okay? So simply, the Hebrew used the year 3761 AD, which will be moving from BC to AD. BC would mean before Christianity, and AD would be Annos Dominus in the year of our Lord, okay? What Lord is yet to be discerned, okay? And at what time the Lord got here is yet to be discerned. Nonetheless, Annos Dominus means in the year of the Lord, okay? So the Hebrew used the year 3761 AD to anchor themselves into history. The modern day Hebrews go all the way back to the original Hebrews, use this same date, 3761 60 or 3760 AM, and the moon died, and the other cosmic world, or 3761 AD, all right, which will be the next year because they're going forward, not backwards, but forwards. And we know that these calendars did not come into existence to the creation of those who imposed them, which was Dionysius of Eutychus in 525 for the AD calendar, and the BC calendar was created by Dionysius in 731 AD. Okay? Very important. So the Hebrew used the year 3761 AD to anchor into history. The modern world, i.e., those who use the Gregorian calendar, they use the year 1 AD. We, as the Berbers, use the year 951 AD. And William the Conqueror chose the year 1066 to report or to record the renowned years of successorship and successorship and authority, as well as the preserve the common law, as well as parliamentary statutes that were created from the feudal era and onward. Okay, because this is the time when we were in hell. Okay, William the Conqueror symbolically or allegorically represents the devil or the son of the devil, which we're going to if you continue to watch this lecture. What we have just now done was perfectly capture how different civilizations, cultures, and legal systems anchor themselves into time to establish their own historical or legal realities. Historical or legal, they are not the same. Did you hear what I just said? If you're coming from a historical standpoint, it's not legal, and you're coming from legal, it's not historical. Okay? We must understand that in regards to Judgment Day. Okay? We just left Wikipedia dealing with the last judgment, when those who are judged according to the audit that's done by this Christ figure, all right, based upon their works, deeds, and actions. Do they retain eternal life, or do they descend into what we call hell, through hell's mouth, which we'll talk about in a little while. Okay? Very important. Let's continue. The four historical anchors compare. Let's compare them. The Hebrews chose the year 3760 or 3761 BC. This anchors the entire calendar to cosmic creation, Anno Mundi, the year of the world, based on traditional rabbinic calculations of biblical text, and this will be the Septuagint or the Masoretic text. Okay? Very important. Those are the only two that you can use. It provides a spiritual and unified timeline for people identified based upon the assumed Jewish history and religious observation, independent of the changing empires. Then we have the modern Gregorian calendar instituted by Pope Gregory the 15th, okay, in 1582, but it wasn't dated till as 1 AD till Dionysius Eutychus used it. Okay, very important. All right, and it was synchronized by Pope Gregory the 13th, which matter of fact, which automatically anchor into the modern secular world as a universal time chronological timeline. Okay. The modern world of the Gregorian used to show the word 1 AD, Annus Domini, not AM, Anno Mundi, and the year of the world. They chose 1 AD. This anchors global time to the theological events the estimated births concerning the birth of Christ, calculated by 6th century monks named Dionysius. Today it serves as a universal baseline for modern international commerce, politics, and communication. Then we have our Berber calendars. I'm not going to even go into that. Let me move forward. Let me go to the little chart I have. Little chart. So the Hebrew calendar year 3760 or 3761 BC or AD represents cosmic spiritual creation. So it was only used to anchor in or point to the time of cosmic and spiritual creations. Okay? The core purpose of the Hebrew calendar, it was to deal with religious tracking and biblical lineage. Isn't this what everyone's trying to do? Isn't this what everyone's trying to do? While that's going on, we have the Berber calendar, chronological timeline, simultaneously existing at the same time as the Hebrew calendar, 3760 BC, because 3760 will be 950 BC for the Berbers, and will be it will be 1 BC for the Gregorian calendar. There is no year zero, so when you go forward, all right, it will be 3761 for the Hebrews, 951 for the Berbers, and 1 AD for those who use the Gregorian calendar. But as we see in the Berber calendar, as dated by Amar Nagadi in 1980, he chose 1950 BC, the time of a Libyan Berber, to mark historical and political victory of the Libyan king Shir Singh victory, okay? Which was the core purpose was to preserve the cultural identity and preservation of the continuity of the Berber people, okay? Whereas though we have now the Gregorian calendar, which was created by Dionysius in 525, which deals with now creating a religious civil standard that globally synchronized everything we just talked about. Did y'all understand what I just said? Did y'all understand that? I don't think you did. And then we have the English Regnal year. Okay? In 1065, there is no Regnal year because at this time, 1065, the only calendar in existence is what we call the Berber calendar. The English calendar was created by William the Conqueror when he invaded England to mark royal succession and authority under feudal law. Okay? Not under folk law, but under feudal law. This was the time of us living in hell. And he used it and he preserved tracking parliamentary statutes, okay, as was preserved the common law that was there prior to William the Conqueror's invasion, okay. This is why Henry II's son, Richard I, was known as, I forgot what he was known as, but he was called Richard I. He created a time called time immemorial, okay? The time where memory stops and legal memory begins. And he used this time immemorial landmark as a gap to mark legal boundaries in regards to territorials, whether they were overseas territories or whether they were territories within the kingdom or the empire, and as well as protect ancient property rights. Okay? Very, 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 very important for you to understand that all these were those based upon divine rights of kings. Because we know King James was presumed to be a king of England. Okay? That brings me here. Make sure you're taking your notes. Whether you adhere to or not, this is Judgment Day. You can't say you didn't know. What is the difference between the use of 525 AD versus B 731 AD? The core difference is that in 525 AD, in the year of the Lord, the Anno Domini system was just a niche mathematical calculation concerning the birth of Christ, which is called Easter Sunday. Whereas Bees use it to transform it into a universal, historical, chronological timeline. Okay? He used Dionysius' creation of AD to create a universal, historical timeline. Okay? What was the scope or the purpose of the use? See, we need to understand this before I go into the meat of my lesson. All right? Concerning angels. The scope or use. In 525, Dionysius Ischus created the AD in the year of our Lord system for one specific now, not broad, but narrow, to calculate the future, okay, the unknown date of when that Christ would be, or that Christ person would be born. He only applied this label Anno Domini to a 95-year calendar table. He did not use it to what? Write history or date legal documentation. There you have it. Whereas Bede in 731, Bede realized the system's potential for storytelling, and he applied AD to all human history because all human history does not just involve AD, it involves BC, okay? Before the Christian era, before those issues concerning who would be that Christ-like figure being incarnated, personified, or incorporated in the modern day, okay? So he used it to anchor all of human history, anchoring every major political event, battle, and reign to a single continuous timeline. And he started with who? Shorshing or Shishak or Sisak in his book, okay? I went over that in my last lesson. I don't have time to go over it now for the sake of today's lesson. Point 2, directionality. We're going to get back to Judgment Day in a second. Directionality, forward only, inventing BC. In 525 AD, Dionysius only looked forward. He wanted to know what Easter would fall in the years ahead, so his system only calculated into the future from the calculated point of Christ's what? Incarnation. The incarnation of Christ was in fact an office, a station, a position, a capacity. But in 731 AD, all right, all going forward, Bees needed to handle events that happened before the incarnation of the person that people believe in called Jesus Christ. Okay? We don't call him that. We call him King Edgar. It says Bees needed to handle events that happened before Jesus Christ was born, like the events that happened concerning Julius Caesar or the invasion of Britain. To solve this, Bees became the first historian. Hear that? Historian. Not a theologian, okay? Not an archaeologist, an historian to count backwards, effectively inventing the concept of before Christ BC. That is very, 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 very important. Why is that? Because BC, which was invented by Venerable Bees, was not used till the 16th century, okay? The Latin phrase he created. Bede wrote history in Latin. When describing, so that means he used the Latin Vulgate Bible. The only two that precedes it is the Septuagint and the Masoretic tablets, okay? Very important to understand that. He used the Vulgate Bible, okay, which was written in Latin. He didn't use the King James Bible. He didn't use the Wycliffe. He didn't use the Bishop Bible. He didn't use the Geneva Bible. He didn't use none of those. Okay, with all you use to tell your story. Okay, your symbolic story of heaven and hell. He who writes your books sets your timeline. Bede wrote his history in Latin when describing the events that happened before, not after the year 1 AD. He used the Latin phrase ante incarnation. Because Bede was counting backwards for the first time, he made a mathematical admission that still impacts our count today. He did not include a year zero. In Bede's system, the year immediately preceded 1 AD was 1 BC. So it went from 1 BC to 1 AD. Very important. And BC was created by Dionysius, and AD was, so BC was created by Bedes, and AD was created by Dionysius, and BC was created before, so AD was created before BC because AD was created in 525 and BC was created in 731. All right. So while the exact abbreviation BC wasn't university standard in English books until the 16th and the 7th century, it was Bede's historical framework in 731 AD that birthed the idea of BC. Do every one of you understand that? You have to before we move on to this lesson. Okay. Let's look at the push. This massive academic push was directly triggered by Pope Gregory XIII introducing the Gregorian calendar in 1582. This calendar reform forced the entire Western world to mathematically re-examine how time would be calculated going backwards. This calendar implicitly locked the annus dominial system into an international law, creating an urgent race for scholars like Scaliger and Petronius to format ancient history to match it. Okay? Very important for you to understand that. Now, why this is important? Because at this time, this is when your religious transcripts, your religious books were created. Let's look at them going forward to backwards. Okay? Real quick so I can get back to judgment. Day of judgment. Let's start here. Okay. All right. Bede's ecclesiastical history of the English people completed in 731 AD. English people, nobody else. He was concerned with only the English people, going all the way back to everything we talked about before I started this lesson concerning the last judgment, Hellmouth, the narrow gate that you got to cross through to cross in from heaven or hell, or from hell into heaven. Either one, there's going to be a transition. Okay, all right, and a majority of you understand it from the religious, spiritual, theosophical view, okay, and not from the legal view, which I'm not saying that the spiritual application is not going to come forward, okay, all right, based upon the near-death experiences or the OB out-of-body experiences, or what we call as experienced by Drythelm, okay, a monk, okay, an Anglo-Saxon monk, back in the what time was that? In the, I think that's the 8th century. Okay, we're going to get to it. Bede's ecclesiastical history of the ancient people completed in 731, and his lost translation of the Gospel of John provided the missing link between the ancient Latin manuscripts and the emergence of the English Bible. Here's a complete reverse chronological timeline connecting the King James Bible all the way back to the ancient foundation, especially integrating Bede's pivotal early medieval work. How many of your teachers have done that? Okay, all right. He didn't use anything other than the Vulgate Latin Bible to translate what was written by those Latin scholars. Okay, outside of those who were Greek, to decipher what was described in what we call the Septuagint or the Masoretic tablets. Okay, tables. Okay, I think they were called the Psalter tables. This is the English print era. King James Bible 1611 was the culmination through the English Reformation commissioned by King James for the uniform public worship. King James was the 6th king of Scotland and presumed to be the first king of England because of his marriage to Margaret of Tudor. Let alone the Scottish kings, also known as the what we call the kings of Alpine, are linked to the English house, going all back to the kings of Wessex, as we're going to see, because I'm going to show you, through King David, okay, King of Scotland, okay, through King David, all right, who mimic or merit King David of the Bible. We're going to talk about it. King James Bible 1611, the culmination of the English Reformation commissioned by King James for the uniform public worship. Then you had the Bishop Bible of 1568. We're going backwards, all right? So we're using Bede's, all right, chronological timeline, all right, going backwards in AD, all right? Not based upon the calculate the birth of Jesus Christ, but the historical timeline concerning all political events in regards to who are in fact the Christian people. Bishop Bible. Then we have the Geneva parts of the Bishop Bible, 1568, the official Church of England, base text used by King James translators to revise. Now, we are called the English Third Temple Church of England, not the Church of England, because the Church of England was usurped by the Roman Catholic Church, going all the way back to the Nicene Creed in 321, 325, whatever date that was. They had the Geneva Bible, 1560. The widely popular verse number Bible used by Shakespeare, translated by the Protestant exiles in Switzerland. Okay? Then you have the Great Bible, 1539. The first authorized English Bible changed to pulpits, commissioned by King Henry VIII. King Henry VIII was the son of King Henry VII. King Henry VII was the father of Margaret of Tudor, who married King James. Okay? Very important to understand not just the historical timeline, but we understand what William the Conqueror preserved authority and succession regards to the English kings which he overthrew, which took them from a state of heaven to hell. Okay? Yes, you are still in hell. Then he had the Matthew Bible of 1537, a commercially printed Bible combining Tinsdale and Coverdale's work under pseudonym. Let's go through it. Then you have the Coverdale Bible, 1535, the first complete printed Bible in English compiled by Miles Coverdale. Then you had the Tinsdale New Testament of 1526, the blueprint for King James Version. William Tyndale translated directly from the Greek and Hebrew, costing him his what? His life. Okay? Now we get into the more historical Bibles that go into what we call the medieval ages. The Wycliffe Bible of 1382, the first complete Bible translated to English. It was entirely hand copied and translated strictly from Latin Vulgate. Okay, Bede used the Latin Vulgate to build upon the AD and to establish his BC chronological timeline called calendars. Okay, very important. The Old English and Anglo-Saxon era, 8th century. Bede Ecclesiastical History, 731 AD, written by Northumbrian monk Venerable Bede. This text recorded the history of Christianity only in Britain. Crucially, it documented early Anglo-Saxon poets like Cadman. It sounded a lot like Cadman too, okay, or Adam, who began turning biblical stories into English verses. Then you had the Bede's Gospel of John in 735 AD. On his deathbed in 735 AD, Bede dictated a translation of the Gospel of John from Latin into Old English, Anglo-Saxon. While no copy survived the Viking raids, very important, we're going to talk about the Viking raids, because the Viking raids go into the very reason why King Edgar, our Christ, created what we call the English Benedictine Reform, okay? As a result of the Gregorian Reformation, by converting the Christians of Britain into Roman Christians by Pope Gregory I and Augustine of Canterbury in 597 AD, Annos Dominius, in the year of their lords. Okay? So while no copies survive in the Viking raids, these stand as the earliest record translation of the Bible into English language lineage. Then we have the ancient foundations for 4th century BC to 5th century AD. Okay? The Latin Vulgate 405 AD Annus Dominius, translated from Greek and Hebrew by Saint Jerome. This was the exact text Bede used at his monastery in Jarrow, and the text Wycliffe translated 600 years later. Okay? That brings us to what we call the Texas, if I'm pronouncing it wrong, I'm pronouncing it wrong, so I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. Then you have the Greek New Testament from 1st to 4th century AD, the original language of the New Testament manuscripts, originally printed by Erasmus in 1516 and used by Tyndale and the King James translators. And last but least, the bedrock of them all, the Masoretic text and the Septuagint. The Hebrew Old Testament, Masoretic, and the Greek Old Text, Septuagint, that form the bedrock of all subsequent translation. Okay? Can everyone agree with me there? Can everyone agree with me there? Okay? With that being said, let's go back to the last judgment. The last judgment, because this lecture is the last judgment, Hell's Mouth, the narrow gate, as determined by Drythelm, an Anglo-Saxon monk who was in the monastery of Melrose that was built by a Scottish king called King David, the first of Scotland, who was married to Margaret of Scotland, who was a queen of the kings of queens of England. She was a queen of Wessex, the son of Edward the Elder, the son of Ethelred the Unready, the son of our Jesus Christ. Yes, yes, indeed. I'm going to break this down to you. The doctrine and the iconographic depiction of the Last Judgment are drawn from many passages from apocalyptic sections of the Bible, and we just went through them all, but most notably from the Jesus teachings of the narrow gate in the Gospel of Matthew and in the Gospel of Luke. What is the gate? Or a gate. All right? Hold that thought. Okay, I just from a legal standpoint. All right, we're talking about this narrow gate. Okay, you notice New Jersey is called the Garden State. And the King James Version of the Bible, the text reads, "Enter ye in at the straight gate. For why is the hell's mouth, the entry into hell? Okay, the entry into hell. You can take that literally, but I'm giving to you from a legal standpoint. Okay? From a legal, because it's talked about justice. Okay? Justice. It's that verdict. Those are legal terms that are not to be taken literal. I mean, taken, are to be taken, they ought to be taken literally. Okay? Let's go through it. Let's start here. right. At the bottom of the composition, a crowd of deceased are shown, often with some rising from their graves. This is talking about resurrection, revelation. All right. We're not even going to look at the picture. Matter of fact, let's take a look at the picture. You really can't see it. But this image looks like Ezekiel's well. There we go. All right. There we go. Ezekiel's well, well within the well. All right. Flanked by angels. Okay, very important. Flanked by angels. There's Angel Michael. We're going to talk about this. Let's go back to where we was. Right here. Okay, so at the bottom of the composition, let me warm my coffee up. Okay. At the bottom of the composition, a crowd of deceased are shown, often with some rising from their graves. These are being sorted and directed by angels into the saved, guided by angels into the saved and the damned. Listen, are guarded by angels, all right, unto the saved and the damned. Almost always the saved are on the viewer's left, okay? Almost all the saved are on the viewer's left, so that would be my left, okay? And the damned are on the right. The saved are led to heaven, often shown as a fortified gateway, while the damned are handed over to the devil, who's hurled them down into hell on the right. The composition therefore has a circular pattern of the movement often the damned disappear into hell's mouth, the mouth of a huge monster, an image of Anglo-Saxon origin. Oh, y'all not listening to me. Y'all not listening to me. You never know who you might be entertaining. An angel. I know I've entertained them. I'm going to show you. I've entertained angels. Okay, we know they're messengers. Okay, so often the damned disappear into hell's mouth, the mouth of a huge monster, an image of Anglo-Saxon origin. The damned, listen y'all, often include figures of high rank, wearing crowns, mitres, and often the papal tiara during a lengthy period when they were anti-popes. Or in Protestant depictions, there may be detailed depictions of tormented of the damned. Okay? Papal tiara. Yeah, I've seen them before, right? A papal tiara. Y'all seen that. All right? Think about who you're worshiping. So hell's mouth is the origin or the image come from Anglo-Saxon origin. So let's just look at it. Do y'all really want to take a look at it? Let's take a look at it. Don't get scared now. This is a monk going to tell you the story. Okay. Hell's mouth is a depiction of the entrance to hell as the gaping mouth of a huge monster. Now, this is, you can take this allegory, you can take it symbolic, all right, however you interpret it. We take it legally, okay? Because we're living in hell right now, okay? All right, and I'm going to show you the example of modern day secular hell versus spiritual hell, okay? With not excluding or saying that there is no spiritual hell, because we're going to hear it straight from the horse's mouth, Drythelm, okay, through his near-death experience and the reason why he joined the monastery, okay? Hellmouth is a depiction of the entrance of hell as the gaping mouth of a huge monster. Hellmouths are the first present in Anglo-Saxon art and often appears in scenes of the Last Judgment and the harrowing of hell in the late medieval period in Europe at time during the Renaissance and later, not before, but later. You hear that? All concerning the harrowing of hell. What is the harrowing of hell? How many of you know what that means? Let's look at it. In Christian theology, so it's symbolic, okay? All right? This is the only, you should take it only allegorically, symbolic, okay? Not literally. All right? Based upon what they said in the last judgment, it said a verdict and judgment. Justice. Okay? That's how you should take it literally. Legally. Okay? In Christian theology, the harrowing of hell, ancient Greek, the descent of Christ. Did you see Jesus there? Of Christ, the anointed, the messenger into hell or Hades, is the period of time between the crucifixion of Jesus and his resurrection. So that would be AD, Annos Dominios. That would be 30 AD and after. Okay? His death. Between 30 and 33 AD. Okay? Based upon that story. Okay? That they tell. In triumphant descent, Christ brought salvation to the souls held captive there since the beginning of the world. What? The cosmic world. Okay? Very important that you understand the purpose of the harrowing of hell. Okay? Based upon what we call what was it called? Hell's mouth. All right? Very important for you to understand that. Okay? But don't believe me. Let's take it from Drythelm. Drythelm, a monk. Drythelm, also known as Drythelm or Drythelm, was a monk associated with the monastery of Melrose. Pay attention, write that down. Melrose Abbey, which was built by the Scottish king, King David. Okay? Known from the Historia Ecclesiastica Gentis et Gloriam of B, means the history concerning the English nation. You hear me? Historica Ecclesiastica Gentis et Gloriam of B's. Concerning the English people. Alright? According to the latter, before entering the religious life, he lived with his family in a district of Northumbria, which is called Cunningham. It is thought to be some modern scholars to refer to Cunningham, now part of Ayrshire. Listen, y'all. After an illness that gradually grew worse as the days went by, Drythelm temporarily died in 700 Circa era, then came back to life a few hours later, scaring everyone but his wife. Drythelm portioned his wealth out between his wife, sons, and the poor, and became a monk at Melrose, where he devoted himself to God. Drythelm's visions convinced him it was vital to live a devout life on earth if he was to be granted immediate entrance into heaven. As a monk, he established a reputation for being able to endure bodily torment, reciting psalms, standing up in the river tree even when the river was icy. And who wrote psalms? King David. Let's continue. While temporarily dead, Drythelm was apparently given a tour of the afterlife by a celestial guide. In the vision of Drythelm, the future monk of Melrose was shown hell, purgatory, and heaven, along with some of the souls therein, but was denied entry into paradise. Purgatory was a place of extreme heat and cold. Pretty much what we're going through now. Hell, a place where souls burn. Heaven, a place of intense light. And paradise, a place of even greater light. Drythelm experienced in a valley suggests the temporariness of purgatory, for it was an intermediate stage straggling heaven and hell. As a result, one modern historian has called him a remote precursor of Dante. The mention of purgatory within the text is vital in understanding the 8th century Christian's viewpoint on the afterlife. Although it is unknown at which point in history purgatory came into existence in Christian religion, the idea of purgatory as a staging post in the afterlife, with recognizable features, descriptive energy, theological justification, and political use, burst on the eschatological landscape in the 8th century. Arguably, purgatory functioned within the church as a reminder to people that simply identifying as Christians would not guarantee automatic entrance into heaven. Rather, one must dedicate one's life to God's work. To this extent, Bees utilized Drythelm as a role model, displaying how previously elite laymen could transform himself and lead a devout life within the confines of what? The church. Okay? With that, we'll come here. Angel. An angel is a spiritual, heavenly, or supernatural entity, not a natural person. Y'all hear me? Usually a humanoid, someone that looks human, with bird-like wings, often depicted as a messenger or intermediary between God, the transcendent, and humanity, the profane, i.e. the secular. In various traditions like the Abrahamic religions, other roles include protectors and guides for humans, such as guardian angels and servants of God. Did you hear that? Servants of God. That brings me here. This is my proof. Okay? This is my proof that I'm being guided by angels. Okay? Whether you believe me or not, this is not now about a belief. I have the actual proof. That's me standing with my dog, Peanut, in my hands, and me. That's my dog, Coco. My wife is taking a photo. So there's only me and 2 dogs in the photo. But if you look closer, there's someone else. Right there. Right there. A translucent entity watching me. Okay? Watching me. You can call it for what you want to. But my wife took this photo. So I'm convinced, whether you believe it or not, hell, ChatGPT agreed with me, that this is in fact a translucent entity, okay, that chose to come to the physical world, all right, to show me that I'm in tune with the spiritual world by way of validation, by way of this photograph. Now take a look at it. Look at it. Where is this light coming from? Underneath the entity. Translucent. There's no light on the bottom of the back porch whatsoever. But there's light right here. Think about that for a second. All those who bypass my channel, all those who watch other channels, they have yet to show proof of a entity of ancestral based upon engram. That's my grandfather right there. Plain as daylight with that white shirt and jacket, suit jacket. Okay? The upper half torso, and don't believe me, ChatGTP agreed with me. Matter of fact, let's go there. I show receipts. How many of these platforms that you go on can show receipts like I'm showing you? Let alone receipts, but the information. I haven't yet even gotten to the information like I want to. By the way, this is my new home, my new house I purchased. Beautiful. It is beautiful. You should see my yard. It's awesome. Did a little upkeep. But let's see what Jack GPT had to say about this photo. All right? Chat GPT confirmation of translucent entity. All right, everybody, think about that for a second. All right, and hold that thought. Get some popcorn, some snacks, because it's about to get even better. Okay, hold that thought. You need to call your brothers and sisters, friends, uncles, nieces, nephews to get onto this channel and watch this lecture, because it's about to get even better. All right, I'll be right back. Sorry about that. I'm back. Let everyone know I do private lectures, private classes. I do appear on other platforms if you want me to. Please reach out to me through my email, cliffordjeb@gmail.com, or leave me a text or comment. All right. I had to go chase a groundhog out my yard. Okay. ChatGPT confirmation of translucent entity. Here's a neutral summary of the observations that are supported by the image itself while distinguishing those observations from conclusions about what caused them. Okay, very important. Observation from photograph. Based on the visual inspection of the image, the following features are observable. 1. A translucent human shape form is visible. There appears to be a semi-transparent figure near the center right of the deck. Background objects are visible through portions of the figure, giving it a translucent appearance. The figure's appearance distinct from the clearly visible person standing on the deck. One person is sharply defined and standing with arms folded. The translucent form is separate and positioned nearby. The upper portions resemble a human figure. The shape can be interpreted as resembling the head and upper torso of a person. It may be given the impression of a face with what looks like glasses, and it may also appear as though the chin is resting on the hand while facing the standing person. There is also a visual impression of these are visual impressions rather than confirmed features. Now, this is how I described the photo when I first seen it. Okay? The lower portion resembles wings-like shape. The lower half spreads outward in a way that some viewers may perceive as resembling wings. The image does not establish that they are in fact actual wings. It is a resemblance based on a visible shape. Okay? So you make your own determination about what you see. I made mine. A localized area of brightness appears beneath the translucent figure. The deck immediately beneath the figure appears brighter than the nearby portions of the deck, or even underneath the deck. The deck surfaces to the right of the figure appears noticeably darker, making the bright area appear localized rather than evenly illuminated. 6. The localized brightness is visibly noticeable. The brighter area beneath the figure is a feature visible in the photograph. From the image alone, its cause cannot be determined. 7. The image was taken in a low-light environment. The scene appears to be photographed at dusk or nighttime. Exterior and interior lights are visible in the scene. The photograph by itself does not establish the cause of a translucent figure. The image contains an unusual translucent shape. Based on the single photograph alone, it is not possible to determine whether the appearance resulted from camera processing, motion lightning effects, or another physical cause, or something else. So in summary, from the image itself, ChatGPT agrees that there is in fact, a translucent human-shaped form visible in the scene. An upper portion that can resemble a person, including what appears to be glasses in in a contemplative pose, and a lower portion that can resemble wings. A localized concentration of light beneath the figure that stands out from the darker deck surrounding it, as well as a visual orientation suggesting the figure appears to face toward the standing person. So once again, I repeat, if it's in fact an entity, an angel, a translucent, transcendent person, who can else or who have shown such an existence of such a one that has been shown to you today? Okay, take that into your consideration with moving forward with this lesson. So let's move forward. Let's understand the legal understanding of hell's mouth concerning the heralding of hell. Okay, concerning the judgment, the last judgment. Okay, all right, let's really get into the meat of it. Let me see if you can see it better here. Let's try here. Excuse me. All right, let's blow this up so you can see it. So we're going to go from the left side to the right side of the screen. Okay? The legal hell's mouth. Okay? Entry into hell. The crown rim, or what we call crown land, are also known as what we call a corporation soul. The legal entity that was created, known as a legal fiction, to protect the continuity of the church property, and that includes its people. Okay, and this represents heaven. This represents heaven. This represents the judgment day or the incarnation, okay, of that Christ person, all right, to come and return the land, God's land, back to God's people, okay? This is called the day of resurrection. from a legal understanding. Because you only got two domains, God's domain and the devil's domain. And I'm going to show you legally and historically that the two exist. Crown land, also known as royal domain, is the territory area belonging to the king, also known as monarch, who personifies the crown. It is equivalent of an entail estate and passes with the monarchy being accepted from it. Today it is called Commonwealth Realms, Crown land, considered public land, as it's not part of the monarch's private estate. Meaning that the king, the monarch, the sovereign, whoever is running, the Lord, does not own anything. He's only there in that capacity to preserve that estate that was preserved throughout time immemorial, meaning before he even came upon the scene. Okay, this is the birthright, what you call it now, or the right of resurrection in the last days, also called the day of last day of judgment. Okay, all right, when Jesus or that Christ sits upon a throne. Okay, a capacity, not a physical throne, but an office. Okay. Crown land is also known as a royal domain. It's a territory area belonging to the monarch who personifies the crown. When you say personified, it means the same as exhibits or attribute the same attributes of what the crown represented in that capacity as the crown, and that's due of the interest concerning an estate that belongs to heirs. Okay, those who are not yet born or those who are born, okay, based upon what we read in the preamble of New Jersey's Constitution, because that is the law governing the land, and it was given from the supreme one, and that was God, not the trustees, who are those who are representing the government, which we put in place, because we are what we call, in the legal term, the what's that term? It's called It's called the sovereign people, but there's a legal term. It's called the popular people. Okay, you are the popular people. It's right here. Article 2 of New Jersey's Constitution. All political power is inherited in the people. Government is instituted for the protection and security and benefit of the people. They have the right at all times to alter, reform the same whenever the public good may require it. These are the enumerated rights or the laws written down by them that protect us, as well as those rights that were preserved in the preamble that was spelled out in Article 21 of Section 1 of Article 1 of New Jersey's Constitution, and that's right here. The enumeration of these rights and privileges should not be construed to impair or deny any other rights retained by the people. What rights do we retain and that cannot be impaired? These are rights that was preserved, okay, which is right here, back in the preamble. In Article 1, we the people of the state of New Jersey, that's that narrow gate, that's that gateway, okay? Grateful to Almighty God, not to the trustees, not to the state, not to the senators, not to the governors, not to the representatives, not to the corporations, but we the people of the state of New Jersey is grateful to Almighty God, not some spook, not some religious theosophical society, but an incorporated society that has civil and religious liberties, which he has so long permitted us to enjoy from time immemorial and to the present, and look to him, not the trustees, not the state, not the trust representatives, not corporations, but to Almighty God. For him, it gave it a personal pronoun. It said, not she, but a him, for a blessing upon our endeavors to secure and transmit the same unimpaired. You hear that? Unimpaired to succeeding generation to ordain and establish this Constitution. So the unimpaired are rights that you retain that were not enumerated in this Constitution, or any Constitution for that matter, that they created. Why? Because Article 1 said the rights and privileges that you had before you became a citizen were natural and free and independent, and they were inalienable, among which are those enjoying and defending life, liberty, of acquiring possession and protecting property, and pursuing and retaining the safety and the happiness thereof. Okay? Very important to understand that that was protected by the crown. Why I say that? Let's go here. Talking about legal salvation. His Majesty's Council. Once again, the King's Council. I'm going somewhere with this, brothers and sisters. We're talking about the King's Council. Okay? His Majesty's Council for the province of New Jersey was the upper house, the Lord's house. Okay? The upper room, okay, of New Jersey's legislature, which they are now called, under colonial rule, which was ruled by settlers who immigrated or migrated here, which were foreign citizens, until it was replaced by New Jersey's legislative council under New Jersey's Constitution of 1776. This was under the authority of what? The Crown. Right there. The Crown. Everyone see that? What is the Crown? Now we're going into the capacity. In English common law, okay, the same law that was coded by Alfred the Great from the Mosaic or the Septuagint or the Ten Commandments, whatever law you want to use, he encoded it and it became what you call law today. Each common law never developed a concept of the state. It left supreme executive power with the monarch. The concept of the crown as a corporation soul developed in the Kingdom of England as the separation of the physical crown and property of the kingdom from the person and personal property of the monarch. It's called a corporation soul. What is a corporation soul? This is the incarnation of the Christ-like entity that you're talking about. That was supposed to be coming in the last days, known as the last judgment, to save you from hell by stopping you from going into that hell's mouth, okay, by hurling you from hell. It says the corporation soul is a legal entity consisting of a single soul incorporated office occupied by a sole, natural person. Did you hear that? Okay, so this is the biblical story taking, having a legal application in modern day, because there is a separation of church and state. Let's go back to the video. Let's go back to the lecture. Okay, so crown land is called the crown rim. We're not talking about something physical. We're talking about a capacity, an office, okay? An office that was preserved, the continuity, going all the way back to what William the Conqueror, the devil, did, Okay? He preserved, as we've seen, the authority and succession in regards to statutory and common law. Okay? Very important. I'm going to prove he, in fact, is, in fact, the devil from a legal standpoint. The crown realm, sovereign, sacred, and free. This is where all your kings took their right to become a king under what they call divine right of kings, which fell under canon and ecclesiastical law. Okay, going all the way back from cosmic creation to what we call secular creation onto the political society that stem from them. Okay, so it says the crown realm or the heavenly realm is a sovereign sacred realm under the English crown, which was governed by ecclesiastical autonomy, which means continuity. We've seen it right there in New Jersey Constitution. The English government was indefinite, which means forever. The crown was indefinite. All right, that's from 1702 and 1776. So that means from before 1702, there was an intermediate period, which means that we were in hell. Okay, which means the divine rights and the perpetual states that were protected by divine rights are no longer there because we did not fulfill the obligation of our capacity as heirs, the angels, children of God. Okay, here on earth, and that's because of this. One, true capacity. New Jersey Revised Statute 16:1-28 says, right, state under charge of Great Britain, said from repeal. An act to incorporate trustees of a religious society for property held and corporated in place thereof. Okay, so the property being held and incorporated in place thereof is on the other side of the right side of the hand of God. Okay, which I'm going to show you in a second from this diagram. Okay, so we see that the proper capacity on the right side, based upon the hell, what we call hell's mouth, all right, as a result of us now understanding our story. He who writes your books sets your timeline. So we see 16:1-28 recognizes inherited spiritual capacity that's protected by secular law. Did y'all hear what I just said? 16:1-28 was the statutory law preserving the continuity of the capacity that recognized the inherited spiritual capacity of the church, anchored in ancient pre-revolutionary charters, answering to a higher divine order. Did you hear me, y'all? In order for you to have the interest in the property that's protected by the church, that comes through a statutory law. The statutory law is God's law under God, within God's jurisdiction. Okay, I talked about this, brothers and sisters. This is what we call the upper house, the legislative. Okay, those who make the law. Okay, true interest. New Jersey Revised Statute 46:3-2, and if we read the statute, it'll tell you everything we're talking about in regards to the property rights that were preserved throughout continuity by the hands of kings holding the capacity of a superior or a spiritual entity based upon the continuity of the office, going all the way back to what we call the corporation soul. That allowed the land, the allodial land, which we now call free and common soakers, to remain in continuity under the corporation soul. New Jersey Revised Statute 46:2 converts land tenures into free and common soakers. Land held free of feudal encumbrances with an absolute unburdened property interest, meaning that there is no feudal ownership of land. All that has been dissolved. Why? Because that's when you were in a state of hell. You have been liberated by way of the very statute. Okay? Because feudal law was brought by who? William the Conqueror, the son of the devil. You don't believe me? Let's just look at it. Robert the Devil. excuse me, historicity, okay? Then we go back to the diagram. Historicity. Various attempts have been made to identify Robert with the historical person, generally a Norman aristocrat of the 11th century. F.J. Furnival, following earlier writers, argued that Robert I, Duke of Normandy, this is why William the Conqueror created the Regnaille, to record successor and authoritative rule, okay, in regards to territorial boundaries and property rights that was preserved by what we call time immemorial. Robert I, Duke of Normandy, was the source of the story, writing that the original of Robert the Devil was Robert, father of William the Conqueror and the 6th Duke of Normandy. Once again, Robert the Devil, father of William the Conqueror and 6th Duke of Normandy. That's very, 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 very important. Let's look at the story of Robert the Devil. Let's look at it. Robert the Devil is a legend of medieval origin about a Norman knight who discovers he is what? The son of Satan. His mother, despairing of having aid in order to obtain a son, had asked for help from the devil. Robert's satanic instinct propels him into a violent and sinful life, but he is eventually overcome them to achieve repentance. Okay? That's where the story is rooted in. Okay? We must understand that. And he was what? The father of William the Conqueror. Who is William the Conqueror? Let's look at it. Which means William the Bastard. When you're a bastard, that means you have what? No descendants. William the Conqueror, sometimes called William the Bastard, was the first Norman king of England. Reigning from 1066 until his death, a descendant of Rollo, he was Duke of Normandy. From 1035 onward, by 1060, following the long struggle, his hold on Normandy was secure. And 1066, following the death of the King of Wessex, known as Edward the Confessor, okay, the King of Wessex, William invaded England, leading a Franco-Norman army to victory over the Anglo-Saxon forces of Harold Godwinson, a Viking-Danish king, at the Battle of Hastings. He suppressed subsequent English revolt in what has become known as the Norman Conquest. Did you hear me? Hold that thought. Okay. All right. Now let's go back to here. Let's go back to where I was. We know William the Conqueror brought in what we call feudalism. Okay? Feudal law. Okay? Under feudal law, there is no liberation, there is no sovereignty, there is no divine order, because what's being done now is what we call conquering, conquest, dissolution, distribution of something, a property that don't belong to those who have taken it. Okay? So we must understand our capacity and interest, which was preserved by way of English common law and statutory law under 16:1-28 and 14:2, preserves the upper rim, i.e. a state of heaven, through liberation, sovereignty, and divine order. That's 2. Let's read 3 now. Sovereign preservation. From the first 2. Sovereign preservation, saving clause, protects the crown, protects ecclesiastical property rights and liberties from what? State interference. Okay? Right now, Your states, of all states of the United States, are practicing what we call a form of feudalism that was established by what? William the Conqueror, even though the law says not to. Okay? Feudalism has been abolished for perpetual spiritual estate if you're in God's jurisdiction. All right? Church and the people stand in covenant with the divine. Capacity and interest are free, clear, and consecrated. So if you're within the jurisdiction of God's law under 16:1-28, which gives you the capacity, and 14:3-2, which gives you the interest, you are within God's jurisdiction. Okay? 1 second. Okay? So it says here, because of that, you are in a state of perpetual and spiritual perfection. The church and its people, because when you're a member of the English Third Temple Church, which I'll go into in a little bit, it stands as a covenant, agreement, a contract protected by divine law. So that means your capacity as a spiritual and secular being are free and clear and consecrated here on earth. So let's give a crown rim summary. Capacity comes from God, protected by the crown. Interest is free, clear, and held in perpetuity. Church is sovereign, spiritual, and unburdened, and people are free under divine and common law. Going all the way back to Alfred's Doomsday Book. Okay? You must follow what I'm saying. If you're not, then let's go here. This is where you're at. If you're not here, then you're at the doorway to hell. Let's see how. Let's see how. The legal Hellmouth, from sovereign capacity and interest to secular capacity. Did you hear that? We already know what Hellmouth is. It's the narrow gate, the gateway. We know the word, it means a gateway into a city. Okay? Very important. So the legal Hellmouth, not spiritual, not theosophical, not historical, but the legal Hellmouth, okay, it denotes from a change from the proper capacity and interest into a secular captivity. Okay? From removing you from the left side of God, which is on his right side, to the right side of God, which is on his left side. Because those who are on his left are those who will be saved, and those who are on his right should be deemed to hell. Okay, so that means that you are removed from the crown rim into what we call a modern state of hell. So from sovereign capacity and interest, which we just went from 1-4, okay, which means that there has been a jurisdictional inversion from divine order to administrative control. Okay, from divine order to administrative control. How was this done? Before we go to the chart, I'm going to show you in the Constitution. How did we move to this jurisdictional inversion? How? Through the modern state, or what we call corporate secular state, which is a captive state. Because now you move from one jurisdiction to another. Oh, y'all don't hear me. I told you I'm going nice and slow for you. Okay? The modern state, corporate, secular, and captive. Incorporated under the state authority, you have now been subject to what? An administrative jurisdiction under statutory privileges which are revocable. Did you hear what I just said? You didn't hear me. You will hear me by the time of this lesson. Hold that thought. lot of you are thinking right now, no, that's not true. It looks good. I like the graphics and everything, but nah, that's not true. We ain't been corporatized, all right, into a secular captive state. Nah, that can't be true. All right. I've showed you in the Constitution where you was on the right side of God, okay, and the preamble as well as from Article 1, Section 1 to Section 2. But because of your ignorance, you have been trapped by a legal hellmouth, which is the doorway which was put there by those who represent the captivity, i.e., those who are agents of the devil. Let's see it in the Constitution before we read it here. Let me show you it in the Constitution. I don't know where it went to it. Like, share, subscribe, donate, free and common soakage, whatever you can to $ Clifford Jefferson L, which is my Cash App. Going right back to the website of New Jersey. Okay. Hell's website. Let's go to Hell's website. Okay. Hell's website, right here. How we went from being in God's jurisdiction to the devil's jurisdiction by way of the institution or the embedding of the devil's law, okay, or the devil's rule. All right, right here, very same religious example being used in a secular way. Okay, we see God right here. We, the people of the state of New Jersey, grateful to Almighty God for the civil and religious liberties which He has long permitted us to enjoy, look to Him for the blessing upon our endeavor to secure and transmit the same unimpaired to succeeding generations, do ordain and establish this Constitution. That's for eternity. All right, perpetuity, continuity. This is God's kingdom here on earth, protecting our civil religious liberties in regards to us being His heirs. Why? Because we are the popular people. All political power is in the people. Okay? So this is God, this is heaven on earth. Okay? This is heaven, this is the law right here of heaven on earth. Read it. Article 1, heaven on earth. Article 2, heaven on earth. Parts of, not article, Section 1. Section 2, Section 3, Section 4, Section 5, all the way to Section 18. Now's the problem. Not 18, Section, what is it? 20. Section 20. Right here. This is the gateway or the narrow doorway that you choose to go in as a result of disobeying God's law. This Constitution. Okay, and it's not just you, but those in high places and high positions are subject to the same punishment because you let them break the law. Okay? Because you are God's popular people. It says Section 20 of Article 1, which is strictly for the preservation and continuity of our heaven on earth. Private property should not be taken for public use without just compensation. Individuals or private corporations should not be authorized to take private property for public use without just compensation first made to the owners. Who put that there? The devil. Why would we allow them to take property that was given to us from God and preserved throughout humanity, all right, for generations to come, all of a sudden now able to take our property and claim long as they compensate us for us? That's called the eminent domain power under Section 20. That's my, what's it there? Is it Section 20, eminent domain power? 21, 20 or 21 of Title 21, Eminent Domain Act, which we'll talk about in a second. But under Section 20, it allowed the government to take private property from the citizens, the people, okay? While the government is not even created yet, okay? This is still Article 1. For the government to exist, you must give them the power, and you need Article 2 for that. Elections and suffrage. That gives them the power to actually create the government. Article 3. Distribution of power of government. So how did they institute Section 21, Section 20, and in Article 1, which were reserved for the sovereigns, the popular people, the children of God? How did we allow them to take the property? We didn't put it there. Who put it there? The devil put it here. Why? Through that hell's mouth. Let's go back to hell's mouth. The modern state corporate circular captive. Let's look at it. And it just does not apply to New Jersey, but any state within the United States. United States represents a state of hell. Okay? How did hell and the angels of hell, okay, under those angels of hell's laws that were created by who? Devil. Okay? This was done by the capacity given under Title 52. Okay? This is the Hell's Gate or the narrow portal. Okay? A portal. You have just stepped into a portal. Title 52 state government regulates administrative machinery, executive powers, and state departments. This is called the eminent domain power. The power to take that you've seen in Section 20 in New Jersey, in Section 20 of Article 1 of New Jersey's Constitution. How many of you caught that? How many of you actually caught that? Okay? Captivity now of capacity. Now your capacity has been captive. You no longer have it because your interest has been taken away. Capacity to exist is granted now entirely by a secular state and not God. You trade sovereign divine right for a state created privilege. Now church become a creature of what? The state. It's your own doing. It's your own doing, brothers and sisters. Through the eminent domain power, which is due the what? We know that in 1776 they declared their independence from the crown. Okay? This is where all the explosives and the fireworks come from, which represents the fireworks. Okay? Hell governs volatile, hazardous, and combative material under state police powers. Okay? This is the combustion in the interest that keep hells hot. Okay? This is the actual combustion that's caused by Title 21, and we know that the eminent domain power that we allow them to have in our state. So therefore now there is no peaceful allodial property. The interest is converted into a volatile liability subject to coercion, penalties, fines, and forfeiture, which you now call modern day taxes. Okay? This is called the jurisdictional portal. You have abandonment of the crown's protection and submission to a modern state code. Okay? Very important. This turns you into what you call now commercial captivity, where now you become an entity and bound by statutory regulations which charge fees, taxes, permits, and compliances, which are called encumbrances or burdens. Now you are bound in chains. You have liabilities and obligations, which replaces your liberties and rights. The corporate veil hides spiritual identities. You hear that? The corporate veil hides spiritual identity. This is the jurisdictional portal called Hell's Mouth, where sovereignty is consumed and souls are bound. This is an internal liability subject to endless regulations, revocation, and state control. No more perpetual states and no more spiritual protection. This is what they call the bottomless pit, swallowed by hell's mouth of modern administrative code, spiritual death, and temporary captivity. Temporary. All right? I already showed you that it's in fact temporary. They're harrowing in reverse. Instead of Christ dragging souls out of hell, the modern system drags the church and its people down into the depths of the state control. So in summary, hell's mouth is the capacity which is granted by the state, not God. And the interest is conditional, taxable, and revocable. Church is now a corporate creature of statute, and people are bound by administrative captivity. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Choose this day, brothers and sisters, who you shall serve. Joshua 24:15. Choose this day who you will serve. Now let's get into the goodies. Now let's talk more about Drythelm. Okay. Drythelm was an Anglo-Saxon visionary and a monk from the kingdom of Northumbria. He is famous for his near-death experience and detailed tour of the afterlife recorded by the medieval historian Bede and his ecclesiastical history of the English people, okay? The English people, nobody else, okay? Very important to understand that, all right? Concerning the afterlife, okay? Doing a near-death experience, okay? He was guided by an angel, okay? I'm not even dead, and I'm being guided by an angel. I showed you the proof in the photograph verified by ChatGPT. Okay? So I don't need to follow nobody else than what I've been following. The ancestors. Okay? The miracle in vision. According to Bede's account, the death. Drythelm was a pious family man living in Cunningham in modern-day Cunningham, Scotland. After falling severely ill, he died during the night. Let's break this down. The return. At dawn, he suddenly sat up completely cured of all the ill diseases that he went through. This terrified the mourners, causing everyone to flee except for his wife. The journey. During his honors part himself. During his hours of death, a guiding shining white remnant led him through the afterlife. Don't forget the photograph that I just showed you about the entity, i.e. translucent entity. All right? If I can show you mine, show me yours. Okay? Because we're reading about Drythelm and his guide. He witnessed souls tormented in a valley of extreme fire and icy snow, and saw the mouth of hell and caught glimpse of purgatory and beautiful meadows of paradise. Okay? Life of ascetic penance. The vision completely changed Drythelm's perspective on earthly life. Just as it changes perspective on earthly life, as you view this lesson, it should change yours as well. Giving away wealth. This is an Anglo-Saxon monk we're talking about, spoken about by Venerable Bede on his ecclesiastical about the English people. Okay, and he clearly understood the English people because he was in Northumbria. Okay. Giving away wealth, he divided his estate into 3 exact parts, giving one to his wife, one to his children, and the final portion to the poor. Entering Melrose Abbey, he joined the monastery of Melrose as a penitent monk. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Hold this thought. Let me take a quick break. Y'all take a break too, because you're going to need it. I'm back. Tell me if these breakdowns are the breakdowns of a master teacher, because I am a master teacher. The vision completely changed Drythelm's perspective on earthly life, and by you viewing this lesson, it should change yours as well. Giving away wealth, he divided his estate into 3 exact parts, giving one to his wife, one to his children, and the final portion to his poor. Entering Melrose Abbey, he joined the monastery of Melrose as a penitent monk. All right? Very important. Extreme austerity. Drythelm became a legendary for his brutal penitence. He routinely stood immersed up to his neck in freezing river Tweed to recite psalms. Very important. Psalms. Who wrote psalms? King David. Okay? Right? Who was paralleled by Elthwith, what was his name? I know his name is Eldred. Okay? We'll talk about him in a second. All right? He paralleled him as king to David, which we'll talk about in a second. Extreme austerity. Drythelm became legendary for his brutal penance and routinely stood immersed up to his neck in freezing water. Tweed to recite psalms. When observers marveled at how he could survive the floating ice, he simply replied, I have seen greater cold. His feast day is celebrated on September 1st. This is very, very important because it said he joined monastery of Melrose after that near-death experience, right? Okay, very important. Let's get into the who founded Melrose Abbey. Okay, let's get into this. Melrose Abbey. St. Mary's Abbey or Melrose is partially. Pardon yourself. Let me show you. St. Mary's Abbey or Melrose is a partly ruined monastery of the Cistercian order in Melrose, Roxburghshire, and Scottish borders. It was founded in 1136 by a Cistercian monk at the request of King David of Scotland, married to Margaret of Scotland, Queen of Wessex, okay? The daughter of Edward of Exile, the son of Ethelred the Unready, the son of King Edgar the Peaceful, Jesus Christ, okay? Very important. And it was created on the request of King David of Scotland and was the chief house of that order in the country until the Reformation, the Gregorian Reformation. It was the chief. It was headed by the abbot or commendor of Melrose. Did you hear that? Very, very important for you to understand that. Why am I saying this? Let's see. All right. David the First. King David the First of Scotland. Look how I connect the dots. You want to talk about genealogy? This is what you need to know if you want to talk about genealogy. Okay? David the First was a 12th century ruler and a saint. You hear that? Who was Prince of Cumbrians and King of Scotland. All right? The youngest son of King Malcolm III. You hear that? King of Alpine. And Queen Margaret, the Queen of Wessex. Okay? Now, she goes all the way back to our Jesus Christ. King Edgar the Peaceful. Want me to prove it? Let's do it. Queen Margaret, or Margaret of Scotland, was the daughter of Edward of Exile. Right? House of Wessex. Edward the Exile was the son of Ethelred the Unready. I know it because this is my family. Remember engrams, memories, brothers and sisters. Pardon so. Edward the Exile was son of Edmund Ironside. So Edward the Exile is the son of Edmund Ironside. Okay? From the House of Wessex. All of these were unified by Alfred the Great when he unified the Anglos into one nation called the English people. So his father was Edmund Ironside. Who was his father? Let's look at it. Father, Ethelred II. Oh. Who was his father? Ethelred the Unready. Who was his father? Our Christ. Right here. Father, Edgar. the King of Peace, or the Peacemaker. Did you hear that? Do you see where I'm going with that? Do you see where I'm going with that? Let's go back to the lecture. Let's go back here. Back to King David, the son of Malcolm III and Margaret of Wessex, or Margaret of Scotland. Okay? King David. Now, what did King David do? He started the Davidian Reformation. How many of you heard of that? Let's check that out. Or parts of the Davidian Revolution. Let's talk about it. I'm showing this before I even go into my lesson plan. The Davidian Revolution is the name given by many scholars to the changes which took place in the Kingdom of Scotland during the reign of King David I. These include his foundation of boroughs, which we call counties or shires, the implementation of the idea of the what? Gregorian reform, okay? By Pope Gregory VII, okay? Foundation of monasteries, normalization of Scottish government, and the introduction of feudalism through immigrants, Normans, and Anglo-Normanites, as well as Flemish. Did you hear that? So he brought into Scotland feudalism that was established by William the Conqueror, the son of the devil. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? It's very important you understand. But I, King Jefferson, i.e. son of Godfrey the first Van Jew, son of Falk, ruler of Jerusalem, the father of Henry II, okay? David, the Scottish king, was king was parallel by Ethelred of Rivervox to what we call King David of the Bible. Okay? I'm about to break that down to you. If you can hold your horses. Let's get back to the lesson. All right, so King David brought into Scotland Anglo and Norman feudalism. It just said it. Okay? Very, 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 very important. All right? As well as King David built St. Mary's and Melrose Abbey, as well as some other abbeys as well. Okay? And he was connected to the Benedictine Reformation established by what? King Edgar the Peaceful. I'm going to show you the connection. Let's go back. Like, share, subscribe. So we see Drythelm, the monk who joined Melrose Monastery of Melrose or St. Mary's Abbey. We know that was built by what? Who? King David, okay? The King of Scotland, all right? Now watch how interesting this gets. We know that they are connected to the English people by way of the marriage of King David to Margaret of Wessex, who was called Margaret of Scotland, who is the great-great-granddaughter of King Edgar the Peaceful. Okay? So let's see the role of King Edgar, our Christ. We're saying this is Christ, the person right behind me. This is the person who I'm incarnating in the modern day to fill that capacity through what we call the concept of time immemorial. Okay? Well, memory stopped and legal memory begins. Okay? King Edgar. King Edgar the Peaceful played a foundation role in integrating Northumbria into a unified England. first ruling it as an independent king in 957 before becoming the monarch of all England in 959. His reign marked a major transition from region, shifting it from a volatile Viking frontier into a legal cultural component of the English state. So not only is he protecting the kingdom from Viking invasion, he's also controlling Northumbria, and Northumbria is where the monks who wrote the stories which we are reading about, such as Bede, as well as Drythelm. Okay? These were monks. All right? Very important. Political division arrives to power in 957 and 959. Regional revolt. In 957, Northumbrian Mercian nobles revolted against Edgar's older brother, King Edward, due to his unpopular policies, poor relations with the church. Divided crown. The insurgents northern Danes chose the 14th-year-old Edgar at the same time when King Jesus, person known as Jesus Christ, came to become king of Jerusalem. 14-year-old Edgar to the rule over all territories north of the Danes, making him an independent king of the Mercians and Northumbrians. These are all historical facts. Reunification. When Edward died prematurely in October 959, King Edgar the Peaceful, the Christ, inherited the throne of the Wessex. You hear that? Seamlessly merging Northumbria back into a unified kingdom of England, pretty much what Alfred did with the Anglo-Saxon tribes. Okay? Governance and regional autonomy, perpetuity, continuity, whatever you want to call it. Legal autonomy. Edgar issued specialized legal codes recognizing that Northumbria, which was heavily influenced by Viking settlements known as the Danes, required its own legal tradition, local customs. He granted Northumbria assemblies the right to pass their own laws, choosing administrative inclusions and respect for local customs over forced cultural assimilation. Securing the peace. To prevent Viking raiding parties from exploiting northern vulnerability, Edgar maintained a powerful navy to patrol the coastline and stage professional military forces in the north. The submission, very important. At Chester in 973, show of strength. Following the historic 970 imperial coronation at Bath, Edgar marched his army north and south his fleet to Chester to assert his dominance. Imperial overlordship. Northern and Celtic kings, including Kenneth II of Scotland and Malcolm I of Strathclyde, all of these are predecessors for King David I, which were descendants of Alpines, who became the kings of Scotland. They all pledged their allegiance to the English king, King Edgar, who was in fact at that time to Christ. They met him there to pledge their military allegiance. The Border Pact. To secure the northern frontier, Edgar officially granted the region of Lothian to the Scottish King Kenneth, effectively outlining the early boundaries of historical Northumbria and Scotland. How many of you knew that? How many of you knew that? Let's look at Kenneth II. Kenneth II of Scotland. Right here. In 973, the Chronicle of Melrose, the same Melrose that was built by who? King David, reports that Kenneth with Malcolm I, which is called Malcolm I, the king of Strathclyde, Malchus, king of very many islands, Magnus Haraldsson, Magnus MacElrat, kingdom of the Isles, and other kings, Welsh and Norse, came to Chester to acknowledge the overlordship of the English king Edgar the Peaceful at the council in Chester. Forgive me. At the council of Chester. What is the council of Chester? Let's look at it. What is the council of Chester? How come you English people don't know this? The Council of Chester, or King Edgar's Council, which is now in modern day based upon the capacity called the legislative branch. All right. King Edgar the Peaceful Council at Chester took place at AD Annus Dominios. We know that was created by Dionysius, but we know that was only dealing with the birth of the Christ versus Venerable Bede, who made it his historical chronological timeline dealing with political historical events, especially the one concerning Edgar's coronation, because he wrote the history concerning the English people. Okay? What happened at Chester has been heavily obscured by the embellishment and political environment of later, particularly 12th century chroniclers. However, it is claimed that several kings came and pledged their allegiance to Edgar, including Kenneth II of Scotland and Malcolm the First of Strathclyde, and 5 from Wales. The chroniclers wrote that these kings pledged their faith that they would be Edgar's liegemen of sea and land. Later chroniclers made the king into 8, all plying the oars of Edgar's state barge on the River Dee. Such embellishment may not be factual, and what actually happened is unclear. Okay? So symbolically, we see the same representation only because of the capacity that King Edgar had. Now let's read more about the capacity, okay, of King Edgar the Peaceful. All right? Let's get it. Because this all goes back to New Minister's Charter. New Minister's Charter. Let's look at it. The New Minister's Charter. The New Minister's Charter is an Anglo-Saxon illuminated manuscript that was likely composed by Bishop Ethelwald and presented to the new ministers in Winchester by Edgar in the year 966 AD and Dominios in the year of our Lord. To commemorate the Benedictine reform, the original is now part of the British Library and the collections. Okay? So there you see Mary flanked by St. Peter. As you can see, King Edgar presenting the charter to the station of Christ, flanked by 4 angels. Pretty much what you see in the last day of judgment. What you see here. In the last judgment. All right. Where's that picture at? Right there. They call it the Chariot of Fire, or Ezekiel's Will. Okay? Very important. Whether it's a spacecraft, a ship, whatever it is, this is the legal understanding of it. Okay? Let's get back to the lesson. Okay. Now, a lot of Scottish kings try to say that they are descendants of the English kings, which in fact they are not. Okay? So let me show you the connection. Hold that thought. Come on. this is the stuff J. Cole should be trying to understand. All right, let's get it. So now, King Edgar of England is not a descendant of King Kenneth II of Scotland because they deal with two royal families. Okay, they were contemporaries who belonged to completely different royal houses, though their families would eventually merge generations later. Let's see how. Their true historical relationship was one of the political rivalry and alignments, not direct descent. Okay, rival contemporaries, not ancestral and descendants. Different dynasties. King Edgar belonged to the Anglo-Saxon House of Wessex, which was united by who? Alfred the Great, okay? And that was due what we call the Doom Book, okay? The Doom Book. He united them through the Doom Book with the incorporation of the Ten Commandments and the Mosaic Code, going back to the Septuagint and the Masoric writings, okay? Very important to understand that. Before it was translated to Greek and then to the Latin and later on till what we call the English, all right? Different dynasties. King Edgar belonged to the Anglo-Saxon House of Wessex and Kenneth II belonged to the Scottish House of what we call Alpine, okay? Chester submission. Instead of being related, Kenneth II was one of the northern kings who famously met Edgar at Chester. He swore allegiance to Edgar as his overlord in exchange for Edgar to recognize his Scottish control of the region of Lothian. Okay? Where the bloodline finally meets. While Edgar did not descend from Kenneth, the individual lineage eventually combined for generations later to produce the subsequent queens of Scotland. Did you hear that? So from the House of Wessex, you had King Edgar the Peaceful. We know his son was his father Edmund. Edmund the First was his father. His son was Ethelred the Unready. We know his son was Edmund Ironside. We know his son was Edward the Exile, who was the father of Margaret of Scotland, which was Margaret of Wessex, who married King David the First. Okay? So we have King Edgar the Peaceful, King Ethelred the Unready, Edward the Exile. Then we get to Saint Margaret. Okay? Then you had the House of Alpine, represented by King Kenneth II, all right, who descended to King Malcolm III, all the way to Malcolm III, and Malcolm III married Saint Margaret, which birthed King David I of Scotland, and we know King David built Melrose Abbey, and we know Melrose Abbey as well. The monk Drythelm, after he had this near-death experience, joined, okay? Through this later marriage between St. Margaret, Edgar's great-great-granddaughter, and King Malcolm III, Kenneth's great-great-grandson, later Scottish rulers like David I became descendant of both King Edgar and King Kenneth II. Did y'all hear me? Did y'all hear me? Who else is breaking this down? Who else is able to do this? King Kenneth, King Malcolm II, and King David are all directly related to each other. They belong to the exact same Scottish royal bloodline, passing the crown down from generation to generation. Specifically, Kenneth II is the great-great-grandfather of David I, and Malcolm II is the great-great-grandfather of David I, the direct line of descent. The royal succession skipped a few cousins along the way due to medieval Scottish succession laws, but the direct biological chain from father to child flows like this. It's called patrilineal, not matrilineal. First, King Kenneth, the great-grandfather, King Malcolm, great-grandfather of Duncan, great-grandfather of David, Princess Bethel, Malcolm II's daughter, who married Crinon of Dunkeld. 4. King Duncan I, the king famously killed in Shakespeare Macbeth. We know that's the movie that Denzel Washington played in, okay? Then we have 5. King Malcolm III, Canmore, Duncan's son, who married Saint Margaret of Margaret of Wessex. Birthed King David, the great-great-grandson of Kenneth II. Key relationship in the family. Kenneth II to Malcolm II. I don't want to read all that. Let me just move forward. King David was officially symbolized as the biblical King David by his close friend and biographer Ethelred of Ridvox. How did Edward link David I to the biblical King David? Very important, because we know Ethelred was also a monk, okay? And he linked King David, the Scottish king, who was connected to the English kings through the marriage of Margaret and Malcolm III, okay? Very, 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 very important, okay? Ethelred of Ridvox lived during the reign of David I and spent time at the Scottish royal court. In his famous eulogy and biography for the King Lamentio pro rege David, Ethelred heavily relied on biblical symbolism. Y'all not hearing me. Biblical symbolism, allegorical. The holy builder, just as the biblical King David planned the holy temple of Solomon built it. So, just as the biblical King David planned the holy temple and Solomon built it, David I was praised for radically transforming Scotland by building numerous massive monasteries like Melrose and Holyrood Abbey. And we know that due to the Davidian Revolution, he brought in Norman and Anglo-Saxon laws. Okay, very important. The pious musician and psalmist. Biblical David famously wrote the Psalms. Ethelred recorded that as King David lay dying in 1153, he refused to rest and spent his final hours passionately reciting the biblical Psalms with his companions. The sinner who repented. Biblical David famously fell from grace but found redemption through deep repentance. Similarly, Ethelred framed King David of Scotland as a highly moral man who was deeply grief-stricken and remorseful for the horrific violence committed by his armies during the invasion of northern England. Okay? Of northern England. Saint Ethelred of Ridvox was one of the most prominent writers, theologians, and monistic leaders of medieval Britain, often called Saint Bernard of the North. He is highly celebrated for his emotional warmth and historical chronicles and his deep focus on human relationship. Let's look at him real quick. Ethelred of Ridvox. In spite of what he said about King David, being that he spent time in David's courts, he also said this in regards to the Plantagenet king, Henry II, son of Godfrey the fifth Canavan Jew, son of Fulk, ruler of Jerusalem. In 1142, Ethelred traveled to Rome alongside Walter of London, Archdeacon of York, to represent before Pope Innocent III. We know Pope Innocent III declared the English Church free and clear under the Magna Carta in 1215 or 1216. But we see Pope Innocent II, the northern prelates who opposed the election of Henry de Sully's nephew, King Stephen of Archbishop of York. And that's not where I wanted to go. I wanted to go here, pardon self. Right here. Ethelred wrote 7 works of history, addressing 3 of them to Henry II of England. We know Henry II was the son of Godfrey, the fifth Canavan Jew, son of Fulk, ruler of Jerusalem. And we know the word Godfrey is the surname Jefferson, and we know Jefferson means God's peace, okay? He also wrote the 7 works history addressing Henry II of England, advised him how to be a good king, and declared him to be the true descendant of the Anglo-Saxon king. Who is Henry II? Let's prove it. You got to know your... Henry II, King of England, was the son of Godfrey the fifth Count of Anjou. I know it before I even get there. He was married to a French Eleanor of Aquitaine. He was from the Plantagenet and Angevin count. Father, Godfrey Plantagenet. His father was what? The ruler of Jerusalem. Godfrey, the fifth Count of Anjou. All right. His father, Fulk the fifth, King of Jerusalem. My family goes back to the kings of Jerusalem. Okay, you see that? Back to the Crusade Wars. Okay? Back to the Crusade Wars. Let's look up my name. About to come to my closing. Jefferson History Family Crest and Coats of Arms. Cruz Salus. Salvation comes from the cross. There's our symbol, the griffin. The Jefferson surname is a patronymic name that comes from the personal name Godfrey or Godfrey. These names appear in Old English as Geoffrey and Old French as Geoffroy or Geoffrey. The surname Jefferson makes use of the patronymic suffix which has superseded all other such suffixes in the popularity of the 14th century and was most common in North Britain. Did you hear that, brothers and sisters? Did you hear that? So in closing, let's go back to the lesson. Okay. I'll go more in depth with the lesson plan when I have time, but I have to come to a close, so I want to go to where it counts most. Oh, I want to sit right here. The king as Christ or vicar on earth. All right? Y'all see that? His famous 1970 coronation at Bath was meticulously designed by monistic reformers. It introduced the concept of anointing the king with holy oil to elevate the monarch into a sacred semi-priestly figure chosen by God to purge sin from the land. Did you hear that? King David I inherited this political theology through his mother, St. Margaret of Wessex. Not of Scotland. She was only of Scotland because she married Malcolm III, the great-great-grandson of Kenneth II of Alpine. When Elred wrote about David I, he used this exact Edgar-style ideology, framing David not just as a secular warlord, but as a sacred agent of spiritual purification for the entire Scottish race. Okay? Very important to understand that. I'm about to come to my closing. Right here. All right. Write this down, brothers and sisters. So if you heard anything closely, remotely to what I'm teaching you here at this platform or on this website in lieu of this lecture, Godspeed. The concept we are referring to or should be referring to in regards to drawing the line from medieval English ecclesiastical governance to modern American statutory and corporate property law, as I showed you in the diagram, we must bridge King Edward's Benedictine reform and the harrowing of hell, which means delivering those from hell. Okay, all right, from removing you from the jurisdiction of the administrative corporate captivity and to what we call liberty through the incorporation of the church known as the Third Temple English Church of England, which was rooted and stemmed through the Edgar Benedictine reform of the English church going back to the time immemorial. Through this vehicle of our modern corporation named the Third Temple English Church of England, we must analyze the legal mechanics of spiritual sovereignty, land tenure, and corporate continuity. Okay? Very important. King Edward's reform and origin of monastery corporate land. In the 10th century Anglo-Saxon England, King Edward the Peaceful, alongside Archbishop of Dunstan, enacted the Benedictine reform. This movement seized church land from corrupt married secular priests and placed them into the hands of celibate Benedictine monks. The spiritual link. This reform established the church held property in perpetuity for spiritual duties only. It regularized liturgical practices including prayers for the dead, a core theological component of rescuing souls from the afterlife, tying back to the spiritual motif of the harrowing of hell, where Christ ascends to liberate captive souls. Y'all better listen. The legal foundation. This reform solidified the concept that church property was separate from the individual mortal human holding the office. It laid the early groundwork for a common law construct of what we call the corporation soul, which is a legal entity consisting of a single incorporated office held by a natural person such as me, or a bishop, or a rector, ensuring continuous land ownership across generations. 2. The harrowing of hell. As a corporate metaphor. In this specific context, the harrowing of hell can be viewed as a legal and theological metaphor for redemption of liberation from bondage. Feudal bondage, started by William the Conqueror. We know he was the father of Robert the Devil, which goes back to medieval law. Individuals were tied to the land under burdensome feudal duties, which you now call taxes. Corporate liberation. Under our Third Temple English Church of England, operating as a corporation soul, this entity positioned itself as a sovereign ecclesiastical vessel, medium. It mimics the harrowing by redeeming or extracting the people, that means you, or your property from secular burdensome, helpless liabilities, bringing them into an autonomous, perpetual, spiritual, preserved estate. 3. New Jersey statutes breaking feudal and imperial ties. To assert this ecclesiastical autonomy in modern-day New Jersey, a corporation soul must navigate specific historical saving clauses and property acts, okay? New Jersey core legal function and connection to the ecclesiastical claim, okay? Under Jersey Revised Statute 16:1-28, preserves corporate titles, corporate rights, and charters originally granted by the Crown of Great Britain before the American Revolution. And we know Great Britain was composed of 3 kingdoms, England, Scotland, and Ireland. We know that it didn't unify to become Great Britain to 1707. As I showed you, the Provincial Council of New Jersey from 1702 was strictly the King of England, overseen by a Scottish queen, Queen Anne. This is the legal bridge from England going back to time immemorial, which allow a modern religious corporation or society, whatever you want to call it, to argue that valid pre-revolutionary English ecclesiastical charters or common law right, like the traditions of the Church of England, and remains preserved and legally recognized in New Jersey forever. Did you hear that? That's the capacity. Now we have the interest, which was the interest that remains allodial under free and common socis as a result of the abolishing of the feudal laws that were there, that was established from William the Conqueror until George Carteret and John Berkeley, March 12, 1664, which was abolished under this New Jersey revised statute, which clearly points to feudal tenures abolished. So if feudal tenure were stopped by William the Conqueror, and they were not abolished till they enacted this statutory legislative enactment. It formally abolished all ancient feudal tenures going back to knight services or escuage derived from the feudal kings who were controlling English authority. This cut off any secular feudal lords from claiming rights over the land, effectively declaring that no American land could be held in feudal subjugation, such as those held by the eminent domain of New Jersey under Title 52 and Title 21. Okay? The synthesis, the modern corporate sole entity. When the third typical English Church of England incorporated as a corporation sole in the modern era, it attempted to merge, didn't attempt, but it did, merge these elements, i.e. elements, into a unified legal theory that's right before the courts right now in 2026. Okay? Yes, I have the docket number. 1. The claim of sovereign lineage. This goes back to not just natural descent, but cosmic descent. Okay? The claim of sovereign lineage by invoking King Edward's reform under the New Jersey Revised Statute 60:1-28, which deals with the capacity, the entity now claims a direct, unbroken line to the historical spiritual authority, i.e. spiritual law, which incorporates the spiritual authority and corporate capacity of the English Church predating the secular United States. Did you hear that? The breaking of the chains. By using 46-1 and 46-2 of Title 46 will govern property, which is interest, the corporation ensures that its land cannot be now through what we call eminent domain, under what we call an encumbrance through easement, be touched by secular feudal claims holding the property in absolute free tenure. This spiritual execution, operating in this corporate capacity, the Third Timothy English Church now views its members and assets from secular jurisdiction, i.e. hell, by placing them under the internal sovereign umbrella of a single perpetual spiritual office. Okay? You must comprehend what I did for you. Alright? What I did for you with the assistance of Archbishop Belmont and the other officers. Alright? Very, very important. The Venerable Bede's ecclesiastical history of the English people, completed around 731 AD, provides the critical historical and theological charter that ties this entire narrative together. Bede did not just record history, he actively constructed the idea of the English national identity, but fundamentally anchored it in the unity of what? The church. When a modern entity like the Third Temple English Church of England invokes King Edward's reforms and New Jersey's property statute, it relies on Bede's works as the foundational legal and spiritual blueprint. Here's how Bede's history connects these concepts. Inventing the gens and glorium, i.e. the English people. Before Bede's, there was no single English nation. Britain was fractured landscaping of warring tribal kingdoms and of Anglo-Saxon, Jews, and native Britain, each with their own kings. The spiritual blueprint. Bede's bypass these political divisions by introducing the concept of genus and glorium, the English people. He argued that despite the different kingdoms, they were one single people under God, bound together not by a secular crown, but by their shared conversion to not the Roman Catholic Church, but the practices of the Roman Catholic Church, which was just were symbolic, allegorical, based upon the practices. But when it became canonized through ecclesiastical law, it now became secularized, protected under modern law through the modern connection for the modern corporation. So, seeking to perform a spiritual hiring of the people from hell, Bede provided the ultimate precedent. He established that the ecclesiastical identity of the people is superior to and predates their political identity. You hear that? The church is the true vessel of the nation. Let's go back a little further before I close. New universal law versus local law. By choosing Rome's, the English Church aligned itself with a universal transcendent legal structure that existed outside of the whims of the local tribal king. This is because when we study parts of AD and BC, we understand the purpose of the chronological timeline used by different nations to anchor themselves and provide themselves with a history, whether it was going forward or backwards. And we know B's built upon that, based upon that anointing of that individual who would be able to understand this transition from BC to AD based upon the spiritual and secular link, which was done based upon capacity and interest, which is called a statutory link. This is why 16:1-28 of the Code of Law of God, called New Jersey Revised Statute, it is so vital to this framework. By preserving the ancient charters granted by Great Britain, New Jersey law leaves a portal jurisdiction open to the separate sovereign ecclesiastical heritage that Bede defined. A tradition where the church answers to a divine mandate rather than a local secular court. Drythelm's vision as a legal justification for reform. Bede is the sole reason why we know about Drythelm's, the visionary who died toward the afterlife and return. Bede includes Drythelm's vision of heaven and hell for a highly political and ecclesiastical reason. To scare Anglo-Saxon nobles into giving up their land to the monasteries. The hiring of land. In Bede's time, nobles were creating fake monasteries to avoid taxes and military services. Bede used Drythelm's vision of the torture of hell to preach radical repentance. The Benedictine Reform connection. 2 centuries later, King Edgar used Bede's exact theological arguments to execute the Benedictine Reform. Edgar argued that secular married priests were living corrupt and driving the nation to hell. By seizing their lands and giving them to strict Benedictine monks, creating perpetual corporate holdings, Edgar was mimicking a heralding of hell, rescuing English soil from spiritual corruption and securing it in perpetual corporate soul ownership. Y'all don't hear me. 4. The synthesis. Bede's history as a title deed. For the Third Temple English Church of England, Bede's ecclesiastical history functions less like a textbook and more likely like an ancient spiritual title deed. Bede's history, 731, defines the English people as a single spiritual entity under sovereign church. King Edgar's reform in the 10th century translated Bede's theological into a legal reality. Church lands held in corporate perpetuity. New Jersey Revised Statute 46:31 and 16:1-28 capacity interests abolished secular feudal ties while preserving the ancient pre-revolutionary English church rights. The Third Temple English Church of England, as a corporation soul, uses this unbroken chain to claim sovereign authority, redeeming people's assets from a secular jurisdiction. By affirming the modern church around Bede's definition of the English identity, the corporation soul argues that it is now a new invention, but a modern legal custodian of a 1,1300-year-old sovereign spiritual state that was explicitly recognized by the English common preserved by American statutory law. Okay? So there you have it, my brothers and sisters. English people, understand how important it is to understand that you are now in the hell's mouth. You are now in the hell's mouth. You're at the jurisdictional portal. Okay? You're at the jurisdictional portal. You must choose today who you should serve. Okay? Is it the law or is it belief? And with that, I greeted you as I have always greeted you, and that's in love and peace of the King Edgar the Peaceful, which I am the modern day of. And with that, peace. Like, share, subscribe.